at a practical level and in theory. How can we follow people who are infallible? Yeah, but I think it's a really important question. It's practical, and maybe just a couple of things. The first one is the whole point of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sending human beings, and the Quran insists on this, and it was something that I thought maybe I talked about or not today, but there was too much to cover, so I'm going quickly over it. When we talked about role models, is this idea that the insistence of previous nations on wanting non-human beings to come preach to them. So they say, had Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted, He would have sent angels to us. Why did He send these people who are just like us? Which shows, of course, there's a problem with envy, there's a problem with all sorts of things. They cannot accept the fact that this is a person just like them, and yet they are that good, and preaching to them, and having reached a rank where they're communicating with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so in any case, the point is to have access to these people that we consider human beings just like us. And that's why the Holy Quran even mentions وَيَمْشُونَ فِي الْأَسْوَاقِ, people who eat food and who walk amongst you in the markets. Okay, like the Quran makes a point to go there. That's the one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is that they are supposed to be, and I'm just summarizing it so it doesn't have any punch now. It needs a long introduction and then it would have its punch. But the point is that we aspire to be like them, not that we become like them. It's impossible. And maybe something that would help all of us to live with that idea is to keep in mind that the same thing we struggle with, that notion of how much better they are, and yet we're supposed to be like them, and it's kind of impossible for us to be like them, they actually struggle with it too. Because they are at different ranks themselves. And someone can take that and despair from it. And someone else will take that and build their competitive drive to try, if they can do it, I'll try to do it too. Even though I know I'll never be there.
Get motivated, yeah.
But I have to motivate myself to go there. And if we go through the lives of the prophets, for instance, they know that they're not at the same ranks, and yet they struggle, they strive to go up, to purify themselves more. We have narrations, they come to Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, or Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, and they ask him, which of you, they ask Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, which of you worships like Ali alayhi salam? And the Imam laughed, and he said, which of us worships like that? Like it's a nonsensical question you're asking. He says, yes, my father, Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, his worship had a semblance of the worship of him. And then we have another narrations where they ask Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, and he says, when they tell him, what is your worship compared to the worship of Imam Ali alayhi salam? And he says, a drop in the sea. The Imams alayhi salam, they know that there's a difference between them. Just like we see that there are heights that we'll never reach. But it doesn't mean we despair. It means we have to turn it and move in that direction. We have to say we aspire to it. Quran alayhi salam orders us to, commands us to. In Surah Al-Mutaffifin it says, after it describes heaven, it says, وَفِي ذَلِكَ فَلْيَتَنَافَسِ الْمُتَنَافِسُونَ. For those things that we just described about heaven, let those who want to compete for those things. Those are worthy of competition. Okay, so we have to learn how to turn that not into despair. Just that aspiration is rewarded by Allah. Not the act itself. Aspiring to be like them. And we're ordered to. This is the other part. So imagine Imam Ali alayhi salam who says, I was a slave to the Holy Prophet. I was one of the slaves, or one of the servants of the Holy Prophet. Yet the Quran explicitly tells us, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. There was a good or sublime example for you in the Messenger of Allah. If it's impossible, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows who the Prophet is. No one else knows except Allah. And He says He is an example for you. You have to follow in His footsteps. This is what you're supposed to do. So which means we have to turn it around. It's impossible for us to be like them. But even amongst them, they're not at the same level. And they're all competing for that too. They're all aspiring towards that. And then there's a whole other dimension that it's not time to talk about, which is the point is to concentrate on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that road is infinite. It doesn't have an end. The proximity never ceases. And that's how we have to understand what Imam Ali alayhi salam, or Dua Humayl, or any other ad'iyah. It gives the impression like he's asking for forgiveness for sins. It's not sins. The problem is the road is infinite. The road that doesn't have an end. So if it's infinite, then of course I'm always going to be short. I'm never going to be where I'm supposed to be. The road is short. The path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is infinite. And this is what he's complaining about. Anyway, so this is more mystical, and we can talk inshallah about that another time. Any other questions related to the lecture? We're good? Inshallah we continue next time. Sallallahu alaihi wa sallam.